Memory hole. Definition and real-world examples. This is my written report, folks, published earlier today on my website here. You can see there's a link in the description and I think in the chat for this. This is one link to go right here. You get all of my writings categorized by date, by name, by subject matter, by popularity even. You get the Culture War Encyclopedia, and if you want to donate, you can do so here. You can subscribe. You get links to all my other channels other than YouTube, and you get Tabby's channel and my social medias. Alrighty. By the way, how many folks of you out there have seen this 1984 film? Pretty sure it's 1984. Titled 1984. How many of you read the book? How many of you read or seen the black and white version? There's a British one. I think there's an American one too. Both black and white. But here we have the memory hole. This is Winston in his cubicle. We'll come to that. Memory hole, a definition. Noun, verb. The term memory hole is derived from the prophetic dystopian novel 1984 by George Orwell, as we'll see. In the Culture War, to memory hole, verb, someone or something is to send them down the memory hole, noun, because they are politically incorrect or otherwise problematic. Sometimes memory holing involves replacing problematic facts with alternative facts. And in some cases, it is a matter of...
Be live?
Yeah.
Alternative facts. Live.
Yeah. And you can see some things are in bold. So alternative facts, you may remember that term being used, folks. And where it's in bold, either it does or I intend for it to link to another entry in the Culture War Encyclopedia. So although this is an article I published, this is mainly 99% of this is the entry in the Culture War Encyclopedia for memory hole. And you would click on problematic, George Orwell, 1984. In fact, I could link right now 1984 to the Culture War Encyclopedia because I did write that entry. Anyway, you get the idea. Orwell, I continue, sorry. In some cases, it is a matter of feelings over facts, if those facts are triggering. And what Tabby says, say that again, baby?
Fuck your feelings. I prefer the facts.
Yeah, right. As you can see, footnote there, I added, see the sections on AI and ChatGPT in the Culture War Encyclopedia, I meant to say, and see leftist AI ChatGPT admits that gender equals sex by me. Upcoming, it says, but I did publish that earlier today, so that's there now. I should link to that. The problematic things or people are rectified. That is, they are changed, replaced, or simply vaporized altogether, and the memory hole is used to wipe away the memory. When people are memory holed, one might say they are unpersoned. Verb. That is, rendered and unpersoned. Noun. Note, however, that the actual person's physical form is not changed in real life when their appearance is changed in photos and film. If all records of their existence are sent down the memory hole, they do not cease to exist or to have ever existed, but as far as quote-unquote history, public record, libraries, museums, archives, and so on are concerned, the person has been memory holed, and the memory that they were memory holed is memory holed, and so on. Thus, it is as if they never existed. If reality is a collective hallucination, as the antagonists in George Orwell's 1984 and as critical theorists, and of course, critical race theorists, cultural Marxists, postmodernists, and others insist, then they never existed indeed. They assert that if people agree that 2 plus 2 equals 5, then 2 plus 2 equals 5. But this does not change the fact that 2 plus 2 equals 4. If I were to hold up 2 fingers and hold up an additional 2 fingers, I would be holding up 4 fingers, no matter what anyone thinks or says. In 1984, the protagonist, Winston Smith, is tortured into agreeing that his torturer is holding up 5 fingers, when in fact, he is holding up 4. But this is not enough. He is tortured until he hallucinates that there are 5 upright fingers, where there are actually 4. And some of you may remember the episode of Star Trek Next Generation in which they do pretty much the same thing to Captain Picard, though it's not fingers, Tabby reminds me, but rather lights. But same idea, same principle, and that makes me think, you know, it was about him standing up for the truth and what is right, and basically his integrity, really, his manhood, or his personhood. His right to perceive the truth and to say what the truth is. And that reminds me that the book 1984 was originally titled The Last Man in Europe. Or is it The Last Man of Europe? I forget. Maybe you folks can tell me in the chat. Those who disagree that reality is independent of what the collective believes it is are invited to go for a hike to a cliff, and when no one is there to witness it, to jump off. If they survive, they can, in their anguish, console themselves that their pain does not exist, since it is not part of the collective. If that doesn't make the pain go away, they can reevaluate their views of reality. One is reminded of the story of the Zen student who meditates on his nose until it seems to disappear. When he runs to his master and he says that he has discovered that his nose is just an illusion, the master punches him square in the nose. And as the student cries in pain, the master asks him, if your nose isn't there, then what hurts?
Right, smartass?
Right?
What hurts?
And you may have, depending on how many videos you watch of us, you may have heard Tabby go into the following theme, shall we say. A male with testicles may insist that they are a woman, and that to say that he is a male with testicles is to engage in the hate crime of biological essentialism. But if he accidentally gets hit in the nuts as he doubles over in pain, one might ask him, if you don't have testicles, what hurts?
Yeah, because I've kicked a chicken between legs before. It hurts.
But
It didn't hurt like that. It's not like getting punched in the ovary or in the nipple. Now that shit fucking hurts, but it's probably still not the same as taking one to the nut. You know, it hurts, but it doesn't make you want to like cry and pee and forget how to breathe all at the same time. You know?
yeah.
Which is kind of what it looks like when guys are riding around holding themselves. It looks like they're trying not to pee while remembering how to breathe, and they kind of want to vomit.
Yeah.
And there might be a fart in there. I'm not really sure. It's a very complex emotion on the face. Why it's funny when people see it. You giggle because you can't, because it's just like your face has gone full clown, and my brain just doesn't know how to process this.
Yes.
I'm sorry. It's
I mean,
just not you. I'm not an asshole. It's just full fucking clown right now.
It's true. You hit a guy in the nuts and he becomes completely dissembled, and that is comical, inherently comical to see somebody completely dissemble like that.
Yeah, it's not a mean thing when you chuckled at in that matter. It's usually the person feels bad for chuckling later, but in the moment, it's just gonna happen.
All traces of something or someone may be memory hold, but their reality remains indomitable and free. Person themselves may not be free, but their reality is, there's nothing that any human or totalitarian regime or AI or anything like that can ever change the fact of your existence. If you exist, or if you had existed, if you were alive, there's nothing that's it. It's on the Akashic record. That's the thing. Maybe wiped away from all the memory of the human civilization, but there is something in Vedanta called the Akashic record, but I think in quantum physics they have a different name for it. But basically everything that has ever happened is in some sense recorded on the universe on the quantum level. Memory holding in Orwell's 1984 and Animal Farm. In George Orwell's novel 1984, written in 1948, published in 1949, A memory hole is where things such as books, works of art, newspaper articles, documents, photographs, and other records on archive are sent to be destroyed in the fire along with the paper trail that would show they were ever destroyed. Here's a still shot from the 1980s version of the film. With this fiction, Orwell was warning readers about these practices being carried out in fact. In his 1984, as in the USSR, Communist China, and so on, media such as books, films, records, documents, photos, and people were altered or eliminated, and records of their existence were erased. Now, you folks may know the famous example here. Now, if you want to read further about this, folks, there is a link to it from the History Channel website right here. And, you know, image is everything in a certain sense, and Stalin understood that, and therefore Orwell understood that and put it in 1984 at least. And Orwell was one of those people who paid really close attention to the most rogue journalists that he could get any information from. So there were certain people who were behind the Iron Curtain, and they were saying things like, well, we see some bad stuff going on here, but at the time, they were either our allies or were, it was shortly after World War II, and so there were a lot of things that even Western regimes were not willing, because, you know, you don't say something bad about your allies, so...
Yeah, you overlook their fucking nasty side.
Right, so...
Which is not what honorable people do. But
right.
Whatever it's for.
So, you know, you got people like Julian Assange who are more like, well, look, let's look at the ugly truth, and, you know, it gets them in trouble. But anyway, Orwell, he paid very close attention to what was going on behind the Iron Curtain at the time, and he knew things that the greater public didn't know. So some of the stuff that he's writing was not so much prophetic as more like he had an inside knowledge, right? But a lot of his stuff was prophetic. He just kind of saw where it was going because he was tracing it so closely on a micro level that he extrapolated. Yeah, if you know Animal Farm, it's more like he was telling you what the media wasn't telling you about what was going on behind the Iron Curtain in Stalinized Russia. Because it was politically incorrect at the time to criticize good old Uncle Joe, as they called him at the time. Alright? They called him Uncle Joe, Joseph Stalin, at the time. Alright? So, you know, if you know 1984, he's basically telling you what's going on behind the Iron Curtain in a sort of, what do you call it, a fable, because it's an animal tale. Alright? But, this photo, folks, very famous photo. Apparently this was faked. Details at thehistorychannel.com, or if you just click here or read, you know. In Orwell's earlier story, Animal Farm, published in 1945, the animals of a farm carry out a revolution in the form of a new government with publicly written rules painted broadside on a barn wall for all to see. After some time, some power-hungry pigs had these rules altered in secret under the cover of darkness. Like all good pigs, she says. Now I have the Pink Floyd song in my head. Yeah, or the whole album.
I work as his, like, subconscious DJ. I say shit, and then all of a sudden his brain plays his music.
Yep. It's true.
It's kind of fun. It's like a power.
Yeah, if I had the rights right now, I'd be playing the entire album, Animals.
You would.
Because you have, you have the sound of pigs, you have the sound of sheep, and you have the lyrical themes going on there. It's good to read Animal Farm and listen to that album in tandem, and pay attention to the lyrics there. After some time, some power-hungry pigs had these rules altered in secret under the cover of darkness. So, for example, no animal shall drink alcohol is secretly altered to no animal shall drink alcohol to excess.
And what's the point of drinking?
No animal shall kill any other animal is changed to no animal shall kill any other animal without just cause.
Isn't that?
Yep. And all animals are equal is changed to all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Because they are animals, they are not sure if the rule had been different. Soon enough, any memory of any changes ceased to exist. This was Orwell's way of expressing how stupidly cattle-minded people are, and how easily they forget the wrongdoings of authority unless they are reminded of it by people whom they try to memory hole for doing so. See Julian Assange, Alex Jones, Edward Snowden, etc. Even James Dorner. Or Chris Dorner, sorry. We'll get to that. As Orwell tries to tell us in 1984, people's minds are filled with trivial distractions like sports, sex, and alcohol, leaving no room to question authority or or to remember the blatant, impeachable violations committed by the government. Now, in a certain sense, you could say that he, not on purpose, but accidentally by default, predicted cell phones in a certain sense. In 1984, there's no way to escape the propaganda. The telescreen, even in his workplace, is always on.
Oh yeah, we
and where you live.
Yeah. Peloton, anyone?
Right, but the telescreen, yes, goes both ways, but also we have it when we travel. At least in 1984, when Winston is going from work to home, he's walking through rubble and whatnot. He has to hear the propaganda being blurred over loudspeakers, but he's not being, well, he actually is being watched with cameras all the time. But anyway, he does escape the telescreen while walking from one place to another, but it's always there at work, it's always there at home, and it's like only at lunchtime and when they have the 2 minutes of hate in that room, and when he walks from home to work, does he escape the telescreen. We don't have that. People are glued. People drive around with their damn cell phones, and they're listening, watching, and talking to people and being heard. And as Tabby says, Pelotons and whatnot.
It's literally a telescreen.
Yeah.
And it's two way. Well, if you want it to be.
Mm-hmm. Right, and you know it's not just private.
Before it doesn't matter if you want it to be or not.
And you know it's not just the agreed upon parties who are privy to that.
Of course not. Just like Alexa, no one realized it was transcribing everything to the cloud.
Right.
Word for word, sound for sound. If you had sex next to your Alexa, it transcribed every moan, groan, and oh fuck me daddy. Every one of them has been recorded by your Alexa. If you beat your wife, your Alexa knows. If you beat your dog, your Alexa knows. If you do copious drugs near your Alexa, guess what? That bitch has you bubbling away.
It's happy.
You know?
Right now, everybody out there has a recording of Tabitha saying, "Oh, F me Dee Dee." If you know what I mean. I don't want to say it because I don't want to turn anybody off, but...
I mean, people use that term. I don't. I think it's a little creepy. But there are people that, in fact, that's their thing, you know? And I'm like, I'm not gonna discourage you. Have fun, you know, say whatever you want. People have food play. I don't bring food to the bed, but that's not my bag.
There's now going to be a deep fake of Tabby saying that with her in her own voice.
You know, that'd be hilarious. Go ahead, do it.
All right,
do it.
If you do, send it to us.
Hilarious for me.
You know, there's plenty
Animate that shit.
Tabby's a model, so I mean, you know, not high, you know, professional corporate, but you know, the images exist. But anyway, all right, that's enough of that. Hey, me talking to myself here. As Orwell tries to tell us in 1984, people's minds are filled with trivial distractions like sports, sex, and alcohol, leaving no room to question authority or to remember the blatant, impeachable violations committed by the government. We all know that Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, and we all know why he was murdered and what sort of sick practices are thereby allowed to continue. Who was brought to justice for this? Who even mentions this on television? Who marches into the halls of power to demand justice? Who even remembers it happened? In forgetting this, we are allowing children to go on being raped. Who remembers what Trump actually said about the white supremacists at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville? Who ever knew anything other than what he seems to have said in the edited clips that were aired on TV relentlessly? The same applies to endless other things Trump said. Ivermectin, UV light, etc., and so on ad infinitum. What was that?
Sorry,
was that a sneeze or a hiccup?
It was a hiccup.
That was adorable. All right. Who remembers what happened at Wounded Knee? Trail of Tears.
Yeah.
Okay.
All Democrat.
We learned that in high school. I don't know about you folks. Maybe you could tell me in the comments and or chat. But who remembers? You know, we all forget. And who knew about the incident at Oglala in Oklahoma? Look that up, folks. I think it was the late 70s. I think it was either under Carter or Reagan, either early Reagan or late Carter. Feds went into an Indian reservation. They wanted the land. It was in the Black Hills. They wanted the rich minerals. They wanted to drive out the.
Sell it off to some Euro trash
they
industrialists, probably.
Yeah, so they wanted to drive the people out. So they sent in local goons who were willing to do the following in plain vehicles, by the way, unmarked vehicles, and feds. Started shooting at the people. Some of them shot back while the women and children ran over the next hill to get out of gunfire. Some people died. They caught a man who seems to have been innocent, Leonard Peltier, and they put him in jail. And so Robert Redford, the actor, made a documentary about that. And I tried to call attention to that when I was a kid. Before the internet, I was in New York City handing out little pieces of paper to try to get people to look into it. Wasn't working for any organization, wasn't doing anything about money, just wanted people to know.
This is fucked up.
Yeah, and so that's kind of a precursor to what I'm doing now. The pretended murders the government committed at Ruby Ridge. Who knows about that? Zunite, baby.
Excuse me.
That one I'm pretty sure was under Clinton. The Whitewater scandal, Clinton's. Blackwater scandal. What about Obama using drones to kill innocent people? Who even knows who Chris Dorner was, let alone what was done to him? Who remembers COINTELPRO, which is counterintelligence program? How about Union Carbide? James Pawson mentioned that on a live stream not long ago, reminding me of that. That was a huge thing in India. I think the fallout still continues in birth defects and whatnot. What about the Iran-Contra scandal under Reagan? Who knows what really happened with the JFK assassination and the Jonestown massacre? What about the Waco massacre? Who knows what really happened there? We know the official story, but, you know. What about Benghazi? What about Pearl Harbor? 9/11. Here are some excerpts from the story 1984, Section 1, Part 4, wherein the memory hole comes into play. The main character, Winston Smith, works in a cubicle at the records department at the Ministry of Truth, which was, of course, a branch of government that existed to deceive and manipulate the public. Let me take a sip of my coffee, folks. Quote, in the walls of the cubicle, there were 3 orifices. To the right of the speak right, a small pneumatic tube for written messages. To the left, a larger one for newspapers. And in the side wall, within easy reach of Winston's arm, a large oblong slit protected by a wire grating. This last was for the disposal of waste paper. Similar slits existed in thousands or tens of thousands throughout the building, not only in every room, but at short intervals in every corridor. For some reason, they were nicknamed memory holes. When one knew that any document was due for destruction, or even when one saw a scrap of waste paper lying about, it was an automatic action to lift the flap of the nearest memory hole and drop it in, whereupon it would be whirled away on a current of warm air to the enormous furnaces which were hidden somewhere in the recesses of the building. A little further down, Winston dialed back numbers, on the telescreen and called for the appropriate issues of the Times, which slid out of the pneumatic tube after only a few minutes' delay. The message he had received referred to articles or news items, which, for one reason or another, it was thought necessary to alter, or, as the official phrase had it, to rectify. For example, wrecked him?
Yeah.
They damn near killed him.
Damn you!
Is that where your mind was going, babe?
Yes!
Goodness.
I'm sorry.
Alright. Orwell continues. For example, it appeared from the Times on the 17th of March that Big Brother, in his speech of the previous day, had predicted that the South Indian Front would remain quiet, but that a Eurasian offensive would shortly be launched in North Africa. As it happened, the Eurasian Higher Command had launched its offensive in South India and left North Africa alone. It was therefore necessary to rewrite a paragraph of Big Brother's speech in such a way as to make him predict the thing that had actually happened. A little further down, or a little further on in the book, as soon as Winston had dealt with each of the messages, he clipped his speak-written corrections to the appropriate copy of the Times and had pushed them into the pneumatic tube. Then, with a movement which was as nearly as possible unconscious, he crumpled up the original message and any notes that he himself had made and dropped them into the memory hole to be devoured by the flames. What had happened in the unseen labyrinth to which the pneumatic tubes led, he did not know in detail, but he did know in general terms. As soon as all the corrections, which happened to be necessary in any particular number of the Times, had been assembled and collated, that number would be reprinted. The original copy destroyed, the corrected copy placed on the files in its stead. This process of continuous alteration was applied not only to newspapers, but to books, periodicals, pamphlets, posters, leaflets, films, soundtracks, cartoons, photographs, to every kind of literature or documentation which might conceivably hold any political or ideological significance. Day by day and almost minute by minute, the past was brought up to date. In this way, every prediction made by the party could be shown by documentary evidence to have been correct. Nor was any item of news or any expression of opinion which conflicted with the needs of the moment ever allowed to remain on record. All history was palimpsest, scraped clean and reinscribed exactly as often as was necessary. In no case would it have been possible, once the deed was done, to prove that any falsification had taken place. The large section of the records department, far larger than any one on which Winston worked, consisted simply of persons whose duty it was to track down and collect all copies of books, newspapers, and other documents which had been superseded and were due for destruction. A number of the Times, which might be because of changes in political alignment or mistaken prophecies uttered by Big Brother, have been rewritten a dozen times, still stood on the files bearing its original date, and no other copy existed to contradict it. Books also were recalled and rewritten again and again, and were invariably reissued without any admission that any alteration had been made. Even the written instructions which Winston received, and which he invariably got rid of as soon as he had dealt with them, never stated or implied that any act of forgery was to be committed. Always the reference was to slips, errors, misprints, misquotations, which it was necessary to put right in the interests of accuracy, unquote. Now, I believe they're accurate enough in the following principle, but the films of Scorsese about the mob and whatnot, and sorry, his name escaped me right now, but of the Godfather films. Wow, why can't I remember his name? But anyway, you've seen these films, and I think it's accurate enough. They'll say something like, "You want to take care of that?" Maybe someone should do something about that. And then there's that one part in Casino by Scorsese where one character explains, and when the old man says maybe, that's like a papal bull. not only should you run, or not only should you walk away, you should run.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the boss, you know, they always want to maintain plausible deniability. And I think the film The Irishman by Scorsese really goes into the whole thing of nobody tells you to go here and to assassinate this person and etc. You're just groomed, in those cases anyway, to just get it. That way, you know, certain people don't get in trouble for having you do it. And Arkansas, anyone? I'm not saying all those assassins were groomed or whatever by the Clintons, but usually, you know, assassins, you know, they maybe are groomed by the military and or, you know, organized crime or both, you know. Alright, anyway, let me go on. Okay, so it's, okay. A little bit further in the book, everything faded away into a shadow world in which finally even the date of the year had become uncertain. A little further into the book, in the cubicle next to him, the little woman with sandy hair toiled day in, day out, simply at tracking down and deleting from the press the names of people who had been vaporized and were therefore considered never to have existed. There was a certain fitness in this, since her own husband had been vaporized a couple of years earlier. And a few cubicles away, Ampleforth was engaged in producing garbled versions, definitive texts they were called, of poems which had become ideologically offensive. Let me pause here, folks, because a little further on we're going to go into some children's books, to which this obliged, sadly. Continuing with Orwell's words, but for which one reason or another were to be retained in the anthologies, or in the case of the books we'll see ahead, retained on the shelves to be generating money to the company that now owns the rights to these books rather than the author, because he has passed on and his family sold the rights. So yeah, I don't know if they knew that it could happen or they didn't care or whatever, but some ideologues got a hold of it and wokeified the stuff. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So Orwell continues, in this hall, with its 50 workers or thereabouts, was only one subsection, and this hall, with its 50 workers or thereabouts, was only one subsection, a single cell, as it were, in the huge complexity of the records department. Beyond, above, below, were other swarms of co-workers engaged in an unimaginable multitude of jobs. There were huge printing shops with their sub-editors, their typography experts, their elaborately equipped studios for the faking of photographs. Alright, so that wasn't so much a prediction as maybe he was paying attention. But then again, I don't know, maybe there were no examples known yet, he just predicted that it would happen, I don't know. He continues, there were the teleprogram section with its engineers, or there was the teleprogram section with its engineers, its producers, and its team of actors, specially chosen for their skill in imitating voices. Now, a couple notes here. I meant to put in some clips of the, you know, when Biden was at a set that was supposed to be the White House, but you could see it was in a studio, like it was a fake room in a studio. Should have put something there about that.
That thing that happened that they swear never happened, that everybody has image of it happening.
Yeah.
Fucking retards.
Yep.
You want to lie like that? Maybe you should, you know, inform Google Maps to remove the image of what's outside the window that he's supposed to be sitting in front of.
Yeah. Also, think about deep fakes. So you may have seen that in the case of Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan, they are being used like digital puppets to say things they didn't say. And, you know, that's just the beginning. Alright. No, I mean, I think there's been commercials on TV where people who are now dead are being portrayed on TV as if they're alive and reading new lines. I'm pretty sure I've seen that.
Yeah, I would be surprised.
I'm not really a big TV watcher, but I'm pretty sure I've seen that in a commercial at least a few years ago.
There's a lot of famous people's heads that have been added to that face swap app. And
yeah.
as long as your skull matches that actor or whatever's skull,
right,
It's them talking.
Yeah.
Bars.
Now keep that in mind, by the way, because we're eventually going to get to the Little Mermaid being memory hold, and it involves that technology. And with a little surprise even for you, Tabby, let's see, Orwell is continuing. Where was he? There were teleprograms. I already said that. There were armies of reference clerks whose job was simply to draw up lists of books and periodicals which were due for recall. There were the vast repositories where the corrected documents were stored, and the hidden furnaces where the original copies were destroyed. And somewhere or other, quite anonymous, there were the directing brains who coordinated the whole effort. It's almost like he's predicting AI. Directing brains who coordinated the whole effort and laid down the lines of policy which made it necessary that this fragment of the past should be preserved, that one falsified, and the other rubbed out of existence. Now, the reason why I say it's almost like he's predicting AI is because I think that they're going to task AIs with doing such things. And they're going to direct others. You know, AIs directing bots to rub out memory hole things. Orwell continues, and the Records Department, after all, was itself only a single branch of the Ministry of Truth, whose primary job was not to reconstruct the past, but to supply the citizens of Oceania, that's the nation in which the characters live, with newspapers, films, textbooks, telescreen programs, plays, novels, with every conceivable kind of information, instruction, or entertainment, from a statue to a slogan, from a lyrical poem to a biological treatise, and from a child's spelling book to a Newspeak dictionary. Here were produced rubbishy, and a little further on, here were produced rubbishy newspapers containing almost nothing except sports, crime, and astrology, sensational 5-cent novelettes, films oozing with sex, and sentimental songs which were composed entirely by mechanical means. And then he goes on to sort of describe a kaleidoscope-like machine, an advanced one. And he's not just talking about using machines to make music in the sense of, samplers and sequencers and writing digital music yourself. He's talking about it being produced automatically in a sort of randomized fashion within certain limits. And as you know, folks, kind of like rolling a dice. And as you know, folks, there are songs out there that are produced by studying what is most effective in people, and then composing entirely artificial means by AI music. That's probably the future of pop music right there.
Sorry, crap anyway.
It's horrible, but it doesn't need to be good quality, it just needs to be effective. Alright? And that's the thing. It needs to work. That's it. And also, if they don't know any better, they don't know any better. So, like the animals in Animal Farm, after just a few years, the animals have no idea how bad they have it. So, that's kind of like predicting North Korea in Animal Farm there. But it really is just an observation of what was going on behind the Iron Curtain at the time that he wrote that in mid-1940s. So, you continue with 1984, though. Winston read a little further in. Winston read through the offending article. Big Brother's order of the day, it seemed, had been chiefly devoted to praising the work of an organization known as FFCC. A little further in, FFCC had suddenly been dissolved with no reasons given. A little further in, there had been no report of the matter in the press or on the telescreen. Now, if you don't know, folks, the telescreen's kind of like the Peloton. Or your cell phone. Imagine, though, you can't turn it off. You can turn down the volume a little bit, or somewhat, or almost all the way, but never all the way. And it's always watching you, and you always watch it, except there's like one corner of the room that you can sit in where it doesn't see you. And it's always watching you, or at least it always has access to you, which is where we're going towards. And you got not only the Pelotons, but Alexas, which are listening. And before long, the Alexa is going to be watching you at all times through cameras all over the fucking place. Alright? So anyway. Further in, Orwell writes, people who had incurred the displeasure of the party simply disappeared and were never heard of again. One never had the smallest clue as to what had happened to them. In some cases, they might not even be dead. Further in, some master brain in the inner party would select this version or that, would re-edit it, and send in motion the complex processes of cross-referencing that would be required, and then the chosen lie would pass into the permanent records and become truth. On the website, this is me now, sorry. On the website Rare Historical Photos, in How Stalin's Propaganda Machine Erased People from Photographs, 1922 to 1953, they write, quote, Stalin didn't have Photoshop, but that didn't keep him from wiping the traces of his enemies from the history books, using tools that now seem impossibly primitive. Soviet Photoshoppers made, quote, once famous personalities vanish, unquote, and crafted photographs representing Stalin, quote, as the only true friend, comrade, and successor to Lenin, the leader of the Bolshevik Revolution and founder of the USSR, unquote. One day a politician may have been in favor, in the next he could be facing the firing squad as an enemy of the people. In the Soviet Union, people were literally written out of the history books by using photo manipulation techniques. After he came to power in 1929, Stalin declared war on the Soviets he considered tainted by their connections to the political movements that had come before him. Beginning in 1934, he wiped out an ever-changing group of political quote-unquote enemies. Some 750,000 people died during the Great Purge, as it is now known, and more than 1 million others were banished to remote areas to do hard labor in gulags. I want to pause here. A lot of people, and I didn't deep dive into this yet in my life, but a lot of people say it was a lot more than just that. And we're just talking about the USSR. In China, I think a lot of people agree, and other areas, lots and lots of millions of people. But continuing with their words, during the purges, many of Stalin's enemies simply vanished from their homes. Others were executed in public after show trials, and since Stalin knew the value of photographs in both the historical record and his use of mass media to influence the Soviet Union, they often disappeared from photos too. This quasi-artisanal work, yeah, putting art to the service of evil. That's like socialist realism, by the way. Those photographs that you see of the shining, happy Chairman Mao, or Stalin, or the leaders of North Korea, and when children gathered around them, that's socialist realism. And in fact, they did that with Hitler too, and that was the Nazi Party. That's a socialist party, so I think that's fair to say that's part of socialist realism too. But anyway, they continue the quasi-artisanal work. One of the more enjoyable tasks for the art department of publishing houses during those times demanded serious dexterity with the scalpel, glue, paint, and airbrush. In this manner, Stalin can order written out of history such comrades he ultimately deemed disloyal, and who usually wound up executed as. Sometimes photo doctoring meant going back to the past to change the historical record, as when Stalin ordered Leon Trotsky, who helped create communism, eliminated from all photos. I don't know if that's fair to say he helped create communism, but he definitely was the top dogs there were Lenin and Trotsky, and then Trotsky got pushed out by power play. They had ideological differences, the difference between National Socialism and International Socialism, which is what Trotsky wanted. After Trotsky was exiled by Stalin for mounting a failed opposition to his leadership, the revolutionary was snipped, airbrushed, and covered up in countless photographs. And then they murdered him, or they had him assassinated over there in South America, right? Sometimes Stalin inserted himself in photos at key moments in history, or had photo technicians make him look taller or more handsome. Here in this article, we have compiled a photo collection with such examples. And you see that one right there. I don't know if he looks more handsome, but I mean,
They
you
made
could
him
see his
look
features
less
better.
drunk.
Yeah.
If you load it,
Yes.
his eyes look less bleared out.
Yes, you're right.
He has less of that derp look to his face here.
Yeah, good observation. Yeah.
So he probably was pretty fucking wasted.
Well, he tended to be,
He had
right?
enough alcohol. He had the
Right.
privilege to have the alcohol.
Right.
Which, when you have the privilege to have something that you disallow others to have,
Right.
you use it a lot. Because it is your privilege.
Right. And that's why, if you
Like,
folks know
arrogant
Animal
people
Farm...
should be smacked with a stick.
What's that?
Arrogant people should be smacked in the head with a stick.
Yeah. So in Animal Farm, eventually the pigs who had agreed that no animal shall sleep in a bed and had to change to with sheets, they get to sleep in the farmer's house, and no animal was supposed to do that, but they did it. They wanted the luxury, and they eventually got around to getting to the alcohol, and that's a lot like Stalin living in the Winter Palace and getting drunk all the time, living in ultimate luxury. Which, you know, it's supposed to be, we're all equal. But, you know, some comrades are more equal than others. Right? So there you go. And then they colorized the Tabby, and they clearly, they painted him and everything. Look at that.
Yeah.
And they
And
took
that
out the other
youthful
dude.
glow.
Yeah, and they took out the other dude altogether because, you know, it would take attention away from Stalin. But that's early photoshopping. Now, when I was young, I used to like to take photos or newspapers and then take a pencil out and alter people. I used to love to turn them into werewolves. But you can use your eraser and you can use your pencil and change newspaper photographs, and you get, you know, with practice, you can get better at it. It's especially old photographs. But there you got, let's see, what are they going to do here? There's Lenin in the middle. I don't recognize the other dudes, but... Oh, they took out this guy. So this guy here disappears. Now look at this here, folks. This is the original on the left, and there's Lenin right there, right in the middle at this stand, right? All right, and that's going to all remain. I'm sorry, this whole thing is an original photograph. This is all one photograph, right? There's the crowd, but that's not good enough. So... this is one photo, this is another photo. Okay, so this is an entirely different time and place with a big crowd, right? And they took that crowd, and they took this section, the whole, like, the people standing there. Well, they took this. They took all these guys, and Lenin and everybody else up here on the staged area.
Yeah.
They just glommed that onto this huge crowd.
So stupid.
All right.
I didn't even get the fucking proportions for it.
Yeah, and here's another example. And if you folks want the details, it's all there in the written version of my report here. Link in the description, and I think at the top of the chat. Here's another example. There's Lenin. Took some people out. Here's another example. All right, you got, who knows, there's probably a red flag at the time, I would imagine. But then that gets changed to something in Russian. Airbrush, Soviet history. Okay, you know what? I'm not going to go into that. Got to move forward. This section I call the Black Memory Hole of the AI Cultural Revolution. Styx Hexenhammer 666 says in his video, The Stalinization of Roald Dahl, quote, "It's a matter of time before 1984, in the ultimate twist of irony, has its own go with this. Someone will Stalinize it and release an edition of it in the future," unquote. There's a reason why Orwell warned us of these things, referring to the memory holing and unpersoning carried out in the Stalinization of the USSR. Styx Hexenhammer 666 adds, quote, "You think they can't do it now? Control over speech is more absent now than before, but it's also more technologically possible because people have compacted so much of that speech into a handful of websites," unquote, and ultimately, you know, servers. As I write this, the world's largest internet archive has been shot through with memory holes. And it's inevitable that those in power will seek to wipe away any mass amounts, of the past, out of ideological bigotry. The web pages come and go. That's a natural thing. Archives, however, are supposed to be forever. The Cultural Revolution ruins everything it touches. The alteration of archives is as final as the infernal memory hole of 1984. It will soon go beyond this. In 1984, there was the potential of individuals retaining printed books and photographs and other materials that were memory holed. With the advent of AI, designed by small-minded and biased authoritarians, footnote there, folks, we can expect them to carry out a digital inquisition to hunt down and memory hole people and things on a scale that will rival the Cultural Revolution in Red China. As Styx Hexenhammer 666 says, quote, "This is why we need paperback physical copies of books. This is why we need to store things digitally, remotely from any interference by others, using removable storage." You know, hard drives and stuff that you can unplug. Not just cloud, you know, or not cloud, I should say. You can do these. Otherwise, it could be Stalinized just as easy, remotely by a tech firm, by a government group that's connected with the tech firm, potentially, etc., 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 unquote. Upcoming, folks, I hope to finish a written report about the prophetic nature of certain authors, including Orwell, but also William Gibson, and go into certain themes about, well, I don't want to give it away, but this is not a theme in there, but I do go into the prophetic way that William Gibson is predicting how those things are going to be worked out. Basically, tech firms are going to soon, if they, well, they kind of probably do to some extent, but, you know, I'll get into that. No spoiler alerts, so anyway. A little hint at what's to come for me. Modern examples of memory holding. This term is also applied to classical or traditional things in our culture. Timeless classics, holiday films, and songs that are removed and replaced to appease political correctness. We'll look at some. Please leave a comment or call to our attention cases that we have thus far failed to include. I got to start keeping lists of these as they pop into my brain. But let's start with Baby It's Cold Outside. We all know the song, right?
Oh, nothing wrong with the song, only that the feminazis of the planet decided that it was misogynistic rape singing. But at the same time, they completely overlooked all the misogynistic rape undertones of rap music. But yeah, Baby It's Cold Outside is rapey to them.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like Dennis saying there's implications if the chick's on a boat with you in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah,
you know, like they're trying
Always Sunny
to
in
basically insinuate that, and it's like you're all being a bunch of dirty pigs.
Yeah. Now there is a line that people point to. However, I did read on a website, and I don't know if this is true or how true it is. We're talking about an idiom of the time when the song was written, and there was an idiom at the time of, "Hey, what's in this drink?" Which was not so much supposed to be taken literally. It was an expression. It was an expression that I've read that a woman might say as a sort of way of saying, "Hey, you know, I'm kind of loosening up here, buddy." At least that's what this source said. Don't know how true it is. But anyway, Baby It's Cold Outside. Much beloved Christmas classic. Maybe I could see holiday classic. Not specifically Christmas, but it went away from some Christmas song rotations in recent years, or it was deconstructed in at least one case to be more politically correct. It was not a secret, but it was also not some grand spectacle, and so the song will be forgotten eventually, and it will be as if it never existed. You know, that could be reversed. You know what I should say? To be realistic, I really do think it's just going to come back. Here you see somebody else's meme talking about the song Baby It's Cold Outside, music streaming 2020, and music streaming in 2022. Not anymore. And you get the idea there. So that's how the meme is used these days, in that kind of way. Not exactly that, but I would have put the song title right on this guy. And then, you know. But in the culture war, memory holding is meant to be a subtle or secret thing, and those carrying it out may deny the change. Alternatively, it could be used, it could use plausible deniability as a tactic. Okay, Doctor Who. I think this was, what, baby, 2015? 24? I remember is when we lived with you know who and you know who, and when this happened. So I would say maybe 2015. For example, just when it would be most obvious that they were doing it out of a sense of feminist protest against the patriarchy, they made Doctor Who a woman. But it also said that the Doctor could take on the form of a woman at any time, so we should not assume it was a feminist protest against the patriarchy. Right? Yeah. Similar with Captain Marvel. You see, Captain Marvel... What's up, babe? Well, you're thinking of the actress, right? But it's deeper than that. Similar thing happened with Captain Marvel as with Doctor Who. He was a man, Captain Marvel, but just in time to try to cash in on wokeness, seemingly unaware of the go woke, go broke tendency, they changed the character to a woman. As with Doctor Who, they said that the character could be male or female, and as with Doctor Who, this is an insincere excuse. Sure, Doctor Who and Captain Marvel could be a man or could be a woman, but the timing is suspect, since they were always men in the public's mind. Here you have an old comic book of Captain Marvel, guy. Alright. The Washington Post reported that in 1977, which was during the second wave feminism, a character in the Captain Marvel comic book series named Carol Danvers, and that's the blonde here, was a character in the comic book. Alright. She became Ms. Marvel because of the feminist movement at the time. The Washington Post writes, so in other words, I should back up. This was a character that existed for a while, just as a human. Alright? Then, to sort of appease an audience, they wanted to go woke. They changed her to Ms. Marvel, that character. So, still Carol Danvers. Alright? Washington Post writes, the hero was meant to be explicitly feminist. Her name, Ms. instead of Miss, was a tribute to Gloria Steinem and her Ms. magazine. Jerry Conway, Ms. Marvel's creator and first writer, also said they wanted to reach out to female readers with the superheroine. Quote, there were definite attempts to create this kind of feminist role model, unquote, Conway said in an interview with Polygon, unquote. So later, Carol Danvers, the female character within the male Captain Marvel storyline, in addition to, right, who was later promoted to Ms. Marvel, replaced the male Captain Marvel to become the female Captain Marvel in the much-hated film, and so on. Also, the related character Marvel has been changed from a male to a female and played by Annette Bening now. Excuse me.
It all sounds so interesting. I totally want to go out and watch a movie drenched in feminism, which just is hate.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of hate.
Yeah, it's
hate disguised as I'm doing a good thing. No, you're not. Evil bitch. Which is what they should be yelled at.
So
Just scream evil bitch at these fucking cunts in the middle of the road.
let's move on though. Batwoman. The Washington Post reported March 7th, 2019, quote, the modern Batwoman is a lesbian, and nothing wrong with that, but when you do that in an iconoclastic way, then that's my point here, folks, and with this is whether the iconoclasm is the wanton destruction of symbols that are beloved and perennial and recurring or lasting. Alright? And, you know, there were people in the Middle Ages who believed that there shouldn't be any graven images of the Lord or anything else like that. And so they would have these long poles with these mops and dip it in whitewash and paint over these priceless paintings.
Oh my SJWs
destroy
of the
them.
past.
Like, well, SJWs today. What is it? What group is it now that the latest group to try to destroy, and in some cases succeeding in destroying paintings and whatnot?
Some eco-Nazi group fucking destroy Van Gogh.
Yeah, so that's iconoclasm right there. They're
They say
iconoclasts.
It might be fucking, fixed, but you can never fix those paints.
Did I say clism? I mean iconoclasm, I think. Well, anyway, they're iconoclasts at any rate. So, nothing wrong with being a lesbian or whatever, but when you do it out of a sense of wanton destruction and hate, then whatever. I don't care if you change a gay person to a straight person, just don't do that. Not in that way, anyway. Quote, the modern Batwoman is a lesbian, one of the highest profile gay superheroes currently around. Her planned TV series will be the first live-action superhero show with a LGBTQ lead, unquote. Now, this was from an article by the Washington Post, which was basically a long commercial for all this stuff, so it's not critical in any way, shape, or form. So, there you go. Little Mermaid. Hans Christian Andersen described his Little Mermaid, 1836, as having skin, quote, as clear and delicate as a rose leaf, and her eyes as blue as the deepest sea. There's a plate there, plate printing. She also had, quote, long flowing hair around her head, unquote. The prince's hair is described as raven, but her hair color is not mentioned, nor is her skin color. But her eyes were deep blue, her hair was not kinky, and with a Dutch author writing for Dutch children, I misspelled Dutch there, I gotta edit that, it is fair to say that her skin color was not mentioned because it did not have to be. Disney, of course, gave the Little Mermaid Ariel red hair, and retained the blue eyes. So we can't say that they changed her appearance since we don't know what her original hair color was, and since she was a white girl. I know from lucky daily experience that green eyes go better with red hair. What's up, babe? For you see, my lovely wife Tabby has eyes that burn green like priceless emeralds in clear water, gleaming in the sunshine.
So damn sweet.
Like emeralds in a little stream, glistening with wet fire, burning in ecstasy. Did you purr?
Yeah.
I had Tabby purring over there. Great. I did my job, folks.
It's so sweet.
So they redid Ariel in 2022. The Guardian reports, quote, The Little Mermaid will star black actor and singer Halle Bailey, as Ariel. A little further in, they write, this week it emerged that the film's trailer had received 1.5 million dislikes.
No shit.
They mean on Twitter, from outraged film fans spluttering with rage that the character is no longer a sexy aquatic Caucasian redhead. I don't know if she was meant to be sexy.
Semi.
Alright.
It's Disney, so it's sexy too.
Yeah, but she's supposed to be like a teenager. Like
A young 15-year-old.
right, so anyway, whatever. One Twitter user was recently suspended for celebrating an AI artist having quote-unquote fixed Bailey's image to that of a white woman. So now they're reversing it. Is that memory? No, that wouldn't be memory holding. That would be pulling something out of the memory hole.
Yeah, that'd be refusing to have it memory hold by like going, no, this is what it looks like. Fuck you.
Quote, it's over for woke cells, unquote, he wrote triumphantly before the hammer came down, unquote. The band Hammer. The article contains an image of Ariel included below. I saw it. Now, I saw this, folks, and I thought, that's not Halle Bailey. Keep saying Barry. But apparently they use an AI CGI to make her look so different. And I have no idea why they did that. Tabby suggests maybe more fish-like, and she does look more fish-like. I know that...
Fuck yourself. Does that look like seafoam? Does she look like she's made of seafoam?
Oh, do you want to explain that for the audience? The seafoam reference you're
Literally,
saying?
the original reference was talking about her skin.
Yeah.
When she was created, she was
see if I can
created
find
from fucking seafoam.
Yeah.
Which seafoam is when the waves basically are crashing into each other. That foamy wash at the tips.
Yes.
That's seafoam.
Right.
What color is that foamy wash, everybody?
It's white.
Oh, that's right. Paper fucking white with little bits of fucking green and blue in it.
Yeah.
Aqua. So if you're gonna say the mermaid is any color, she's a pearlescent blue-green.
Yeah, let me see if they mentioned
with
foam.
a lot of white. You know? If you want to fucking be accurate, but they don't want to be accurate. They want to take fucking characters away from a fucking oppressed minority in culture, which is a ginger!
Yes, it's true.
We all get tormented as children! Stop taking the things that made us feel special away and giving them to people who don't need them! They just don't! They just don't! Yeah, fuck you!
This is the short story from the original. But anyway.
Yeah, when the Little Mermaid dies in Hans Christensen's telling,
yes,
she turns back into the sea foam.
Here, yeah, I got right to it. And you will be once more a mermaid and return to us to live out your 300 years, before you die and change into the salt sea foam. And so what's salt sea foam, as Tabby says, other than pale. So there you go. So that's why I should have read that more carefully, but I read this like an hour or two before I started this, so I should have read that more carefully. But Tabby pointed that out to me after I had published this. I'm going to try to go back in there and put that in if I remember. But yeah, so he did actually say what her skin color is, kind of. But there you go. So Halle Bailey, okay, great actress. Apparently she could sing, because she does sing in this film. It's going to come out this spring. But I understand she's not young and the character is young, but entirely different phase, you know? It's like I kind of want to see Halle Bailey's face, man. Anyway, to think she's let's see here, why an entirely different face? It's just bad. Anyway, of course, it's racist to want them to not memory hole the Little Mermaid. Also, it's racist to try to pull that which was to be rectified, I wrote rectified, out of the fire of the memory hole to save it from being memory holed. The New York Post reported in quote-unquote racist AI scientists blasted for quote-unquote fixing Black Ariel in The Little Mermaid, September 15, 2022. They write, quote, Twitter decided 2 users cannot be part of their world after an artificial intelligence scientist, whatever that means, quote-unquote, whitewashed actress Halle Bailey in The Little Mermaid trailer. In addition to suspending their respective accounts, the AI guy has been blasted by other users on the site for digitally replacing Bailey, who is black, with a fake white actress. The viral tweet circulated days after the new Disney film's trailer reportedly received over 1.5 million dislikes on YouTube from quote-unquote racist viewers who are upset that the previously white-skinned, red-headed Ariel is now a black woman. Twitter user at 10 gazillion IQ took that to the next level and quote-unquote fixed the clip by using AI to make the live-action fish woman white. Quote, credits to our member artificial intelligence scientist at 10 gazillion IQ, unquote, the tweet made by another user at Vandal BIM read, according to screenshots taken by Daily Mail before the account was suspended. All right. Another user saw the tweet early, too, and screenshotted it to promote the artist's controversial work. Quote, he fixed The Little Mermaid, and here we go. There's a screen, we'll see video, I think. But there's a screenshot of the whitewashed Halle Berry. I mean, she was like altered already, so why can't we alter it to
still looks stupid, but it's closer.
It does, yeah. I agree with that.
Like a cookie cutter fit.
Yeah. But that's an AI for you. It's gonna do that, you know. Quote, he fixed The Little Mermaid and turned the woke actor into a ginger white girl, unquote, the promoter said in their own tweet. Quote, he says he can fix the whole move, I think they mean movie, comes out with 4x A6000 in 24 hours. It's over for woke cells, unquote.
He should fucking remake them all and release some bootleg.
Right.
And be like, here's a fucking non-woke version of a fucking child movie that was meant for gingers. Assholes!
Tabby's a little sensitive about that because you see when you are a ginger, not only are you gorgeous, but you're also, because of that fact, a target for jealous girls, for guys who don't know how to approach a girl.
Even.
Adults too, yeah. Yep. Okay, let's watch a little bit of this. I'm not going... Well, okay, I'm going to have to turn off my own music.
Can enjoy it, but it wasn't written for them.
And I think this is going to be Halle Bailey's... I want to say Barry all the time.
And I do have a bit of Dutch blood. That explains my titties and my booty.
Yeah. It's that sort of good milk-fed boobies.
Pretty much. I just don't have the height of the Dutch. I am a short one.
Yeah.
I got that Irish height.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Well, check this out, though. The Post reports, quote, "I'm not racist, I just fixed, quote unquote, a kid's movie by changing the main character's race. Totally not racist," unquote. One person mocked the users. So in other words, this is a leftist who is basically doing doing a stereotype they think of the people who modified that back to a white girl's face there.
Like,
they're saying, "I'm not racist, I just fixed the kid's movie by changing the main character's race. Totally not racist." But you have to stop and think, wait a minute.
You guys did it first.
Yeah.
Dipshit.
By the way, quote, "Walt Disney Studios posted the trailer to its YouTube channel on Friday, and it quickly racked up millions of views, but the company was forced to disable the dislike button after receiving 1.5 million thumbs down in just 2 days. And the movie is not going to be out for months now. That's just the trailer." Now, in this vein, if you want, folks, I can give you links to the following articles by the following sources, and pay attention to the different attitudes that are evident in the headlines by these different sources. Rolling Stone, September 14, 2022, their headline, "Racists are worried about the historical accuracy of mermaids." We have the New York Post, September 15, 2022. If you pay attention in the New York Post, they like to be sort of rogue, and it's a big middle finger to other mainstream sources. Washington, New York Times, and etc. Their headline is, quote-unquote, "Racist AI scientist blasted for, quote-unquote, fixing Black Ariel in, in The Little Mermaid," which I already read that earlier. So, The Guardian, same day, their headline, "We are all losers in the woke versus racist, quote-unquote, Little Mermaid culture war." And finally, CNN with analysis, "A definitive rebuttal to every racist Little Mermaid argument." Now we have Mary Jane from Spider-Man. Another iconic red-headed white girl has been Mary Jane Watson, Spider-Man's love interest.
With a fiery attitude.
Right.
Wiped from history and turned into a sniveling little cunt. Now,
in this case, unlike the Little Mermaid, she was literally, this character made a redhead from the very beginning. I would not say that actress Zendaya, I guess is how you say it, is black. Nor, as Mary Jane, did they give her red hair. You see, so she's certainly not black, but she's definitely not white, she definitely doesn't have the iconic red hair. She simply doesn't pass for the iconic character in any way, And this is a screenshot of her character. This is not just the actress, as she looks. This is her in the film. So that's the character there being portrayed, Mary Jane Watson. It may be that the black Spider-Man in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was an attempt to replace white Spider-Man with a black one.
People off so much they created like a multiverse situation.
Right, so
they're like, oops, we're sorry.
No. As far as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, folks, what they made was a Spider-Verse story, and you can even see it a little bit in the commercials where there's different Spider-Mans or whatever in different universes. One, I think, was a pig. And
yeah, that's just fucking.
One of them was the black character. Now, it may be that in the film he was the main Spider-Man, but the ad campaign that they did certainly made it seem as if he was the main Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. So now that's a crafty way of not exactly just making the character like what they did with Mary Jane there. It's a little different.
Yeah.
But like Tabby says, there was a backlash, so I think they backed away from that.
Yeah, they did, and they created a whole other fucking scenario in which to excuse themselves.
So there's Mary Jane, by the way. This is a comic,
Fucking bullshit.
and I think they got it right. They gave her green eyes, and this is the old school comic.
Yeah, it's like, I'm sorry, you can't be fiery like a ginger without being a ginger. You just can't.
Right.
Okay.
And there's
We're special in that way. That's why it takes a special man to stomach a ginger.
When I think perhaps the majority of people, when thinking of Mary Jane, they think of this incarnation.
Yeah, and even they turned the blonde chick's head red. They
Yeah,
had the
she was.
decency to do that.
She
I don't
was.
know if she wore contacts, but I didn't care to check. They got the hair right. That was all I cared about.
Yeah, I don't know about her eye color in that movie, but her hair's red. So, Mrs. Butterworth, another one. Also in 2020, CNN published Uncle Ben's and Mrs. Butterworth's follow Aunt Jemima phasing out racial stereotypes in logos. And you can see CNN's attitude is completely iconoclastic there.
They just fucking removed a woman from history who not only came up with the baddest fucking taste of syrup, like, it's badass. Like, Miss Butterworth is by far the best flavored syrup. And that's because that bitch was smart and put a cube of butter inside of her fucking syrup when she cooked it up to be on pancakes. She wasn't stupid.
By the way, folks, I want you all...
Butterworth, because it's got butter in it.
Yeah. Sorry, babe, I didn't mean to. I want you all, folks, all to know, when I link to articles by, say, CNN or whatever, I'm not going to make you click on a CNN article. When you click on this, it doesn't actually go to CNN. You don't give them any money. You don't get to deal with the pop-up ads and all that. It's an archive, and so it goes straight to an archive of that article. That way it's preserved. It's preserved from being memory hold, unless they go after those servers, and there you go.
Well, see, it reminds people of the slave days. It should, because when you forget history, you're doomed to fucking repeat it. So if you whitewash all of history, which is what these CNN people and most of the people at these fucking companies, they're like, we shouldn't do this bad thing anymore, let's get rid of it. They're a bunch of fucking racist cunts and they know it, and this is their opportunity to remove the icons that they don't like to look at or compete with.
Yeah.
Bottom line, that's all that is.
Yeah.
Alright? That's all they've done to her.
Then we have, by the way, there's links for all this stuff, of course. Uncle Ben. In 2020, NPR published Uncle Ben's changing name to Ben's Original after criticism of racial stereotyping. And a link for that, of course. Now we go on to Roald, I'm probably not saying that correctly, Roald Dahl's classic children's books. The much-beloved children's books of the late Roald Dahl, who wrote deliberately irreverent stories and who was hostile to editorial softening of his characteristic edginess, has been Stalinized, memory hold, cut to pieces, shot through with memory holes. Again, as Styx Hexenhammer 666 rightly states in the Stalinization of Roald Dahl, this is a part of a genuine valid slope. Slippery slope, I meant to write. A valid slippery slope. As he points out, you know, some people don't understand that there is the slippery slope fallacy. That is to say that just because this happens, that means the next thing and the next thing will happen. And a valid slippery slope, which means that this is happening, or will happen because it has happened in the past. All right. The Telegraph reported in Across His Beloved Children's Book, hundreds of authors' words have been changed or entirely removed in a bid for relevancy, quote unquote. February 17th, 2023, so that's pretty recent. They write, quote, words, quote unquote, words matter, begins the discreet notice, which sits at the bottom of the copyright page of Puffin's latest editions of Roald Dahl's books. Quote, the wonderful words of Roald Dahl can transport you to different worlds and introduce you to the most marvelous characters. This book was written many years ago, and so we regularly review the language to ensure that it can continue to be enjoyed by all today, unquote. Put simply, this is the Telegraph saying this now, put simply, these may not be the words Dahl wrote. The publishers have given themselves license to edit the writer as they see fit, chopping, altering, and adding where necessary to bring his books in line with contemporary sensibilities. And that's called the Cultural Revolution sometimes in communism. By comparing the latest editions with earlier versions of the texts, the Telegraph has found hundreds of changes to Dahl's stories. Language related to weight, mental health, violence, gender, and race has been cut and rewritten. Remember the Cloud Men in James and the Giant Peach? They are now the Cloud People. The small foxes in Fantastic Mr. Fox are now female. In Matilda, a mention of Rudyard Kipling has been cut and Jane Austen added. Because Rudyard Kipling is now viewed as being racist, for his time it was not. It's Roald Dahl, but different. Dahl, who died in 1990, is one of the most successful children's authors of all time. Unquote. A little further in, the Telegraph report reads, quote, more than 250 million copies of his books, which include novels such as The Witches, The Twits, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, as well as his memoirs, Boy and Going Solo, have been sold worldwide. His stories are characterized by dark humor and unexpected twists. A little further down they write, in recent years Dahl has been criticized for anti-Semitism, misogyny, and racism. The modern editor of Dahl faces a dilemma: how to retain Dahl's compelling spikiness, which has enthralled generations of readers, while bringing it in line with the hair-trigger sensitivities of children's publishing. Puffin's overhaul is the result. While there have been tweaks before, there has never been an alteration on this scale. Take The Witches, for example. Dahl's memorably unpleasant 1983 novel. And you get that. They're nudging you here, folks. It's supposed to be unpleasant. Memorably so. The 1983 novel about a young boy growing up in a world ruled by a coven of secretive witches. A little further in they write, unsurprisingly, given the witches' subject matter, many of the edits are to do with depictions of women. Chambermaid becomes cleaner. Great flock of ladies becomes great group of ladies, because you can't compare the birds to birds. You know what I mean? You must be mad woman becomes you must be out of your mind. The old hag becomes the old crow. A witch is always a woman, went the 2001 version of the book. Quote, I do not wish to speak badly about women. Most women are lovely. But the fact remains that all witches are women. There is no such thing as a male witch, unquote. That became simply, quote, a witch is always a woman. There is no such thing as a male witch, unquote. These edits mute the original sense. Elsewhere, changes give a new meaning, like this one. The witches doing their bit for women in STEM. Science, technology, engineering, math. Okay. Other alterations are about weight. Quote, fat little brown mouse, unquote, becomes, quote, little brown mouse, unquote. Quote, here's your little boy, she said, he needs to go on a diet, unquote, becomes, here's your little boy. Okay. Now, what's wrong with putting fat kids on diets? I guess it's politically incorrect. In the earlier version, the narrator exclaims, quote, but what about the rest of the world? I cried. What about America and France and Holland and Germany? What about Norway? Unquote. Now the sentence about America and France and Holland and Germany has been cut. The rest of the world is evidently bigger now than it was. This is only a sample of 59 changes found in The Witches, and that's one book of many. And it's only one of Dahl's books. Across the new editions, there are hundreds of edits, some bigger than others. In Matilda, a passage where the heroine is learning about the escapist power of literature has changed. Elsewhere, Miss Trunchbull's great horsey face became simply her face. 8 little nutty idiots. Wait, 8 nutty little idiots became 8 nutty little boys. Okay, so... but not girls. Rather than turning white, a character turns quite pale. In another example. Oh, God. In James and the Giant Peach, the Cloud Men have become Cloud People. Miss Sponge is no longer the fat one. Miss Spider's head is no longer black. And the Earthworm no longer has lovely pink skin, but lovely smooth skin. In the Twits, a weird African language is no longer weird, while Mrs. Twits is no longer ugly and beastly, but simply beastly. In the new version of George's Marvelous Medicine, George exclaims changes to... exclamation changes to... Oh, I don't know. Did I fail to copy-paste that? Sorry about that, folks. In Fantastic Mr. Fox, a description of tractors saying that, quote, the machines were both black, unquote, has now been cut. Why? In the new doll world, it seems neither machines nor animals can be described with a color, nor can anything be fat. Quote, Bunch, the little pot-bellied dwarf, unquote, is now plain old Bunce. Sorry, Bunce, the pot-bellied dwarf, is now just Bunce. The small fox's previously sons are now daughters, while Badger's son has become a little one. Even the harmless ECO Trot, if I'm saying that correctly, has not escaped. Tortoises no longer come, quote, mostly from North Africa, unquote, but from, quote, many different countries, unquote. Perhaps more egregiously, given the story's punching title, quote, tortoises are very backward creatures, therefore they can only understand words that are written backwards, unquote, has become simply, quote, they can only understand words that are written backwards, unquote. So I guess it's politically incorrect to say that another species is backwards. And so on. Hundreds of changes to some of the best-loved children's books ever written. Even Quentin Blake's illustrations do not make it through the sensitivity reading unscathed. Early editions of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory include 3 sketches of Mike TV with 18 toy pistols hanging, quote, hanging from belts around his body, unquote. But the guns have been scrubbed out by 2022, as well as a related sentence. A little further down, the Telegraph writes, the rewriting of Doll is part of a general trend for, quote-unquote, sensitivity readings, where books are screened before publication for material that might be upsetting. The practice began in children's books, where it remains most pronounced. Anthony Horowitz, the best-selling author, recently talked about falling foul of the censor over a Native American character attacking someone with a scalpel. There's the author, by the way. Graphics from the Telegraph article. Quote, I made the changes, but I will confess they hurt, unquote, Horowitz wrote in the Spectator. Quote, it just feels wrong to be told what to write by an outside party, no matter how well-meaning, unquote. Addressing the Hay Festival last year, Horowitz commented, quote, children's book publishers are more scared of cancel culture, the implication being, than anybody, unquote. Dahl has long been controversial. It's not the first time his books have been changed to reflect contemporary mores. They do give some old examples. The Hollywood interest, or around Hollywood interest. In the first edition of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, 1964, the Oompa Loompas were black pygmies enslaved by Willy Wonka from, quote, the deepest and darkest part of the African jungle, unquote, and paid in cocoa beans. Dahl rewrote the character in the late 1960s to, quote-unquote, de-negro them, in his words, for Mel Stewart's 1971 film starring Gene Wilder. The Oompas became green-haired, for Mel Stewart's 1971 film starring Gene Wilder, the Oompas became green-haired, orange-skinned figures. By a 1973 edition of the book, they had become, quote, little fantasy creatures, unquote. So they're no longer black pygmies, I guess. But and that was in 1973. So already, and that was an era of political correctness, by the way. That was a wave back then, for sure. But in recent years, Dahl has become an increasingly divisive figure, not only accused of racism and misogyny, but of anti-Semitism too. The latter was so apparent in his writings and private life that, is it? In 2020, the Dahl family issued an apology. And there's a lot here. You can read all of this if you want, folks. But apparently they apologized for his anti-Semitism, or at least they said so anyway. The Dahl estate, they then sold the rights. Netflix bought the rights to the books. Weird. To the books, all right? Not the film. We're talking about the books. They're the estate, the family. $686 million. But now they get to cut it up and do whatever they want. And so here's some of the titles. Alexander, and let's see here. Yeah, okay. Alexandra Strick. It's almost like strict. A co-founder of Inclusive Minds says they, quote, aim to ensure authentic representation by working closely with the book world and with those who have lived experience with any facet of diversity, unquote. To do this, they call on a team of, quote-unquote, inclusion ambassadors with a variety of, quote-unquote, lived experience. She says they mostly work with authors writing now, but are sometimes asked to work on older texts. Quote, occasionally publishers approach us to consult. I'm sure they approach you. Well, maybe, maybe they do, but, they're in... Okay, these are grifters, these kind of groups, these inclusion ambassadors and groups like Inclusive Minds. They're grifting the fuck off of... This is like when you see a mob of torches and pitchforks wielding peasants, and you somehow know how to get in on them and play on them, and you're like, yeah, I'm here to service your needs, as to light your torches for you, whatever. This is grifting. This is crazy. Imagine saying, I'm a diversity expert and a lived experience inclusion ambassador, and if you really want college students to buy your product, you really need to hire me, and if you don't, we'll say you're racist, and etc. So they're talking about going back and doing older titles. Quote, occasionally publishers approach us to consult inclusion ambassadors when looking to reprint older titles. All right. Yeah. Maybe they do approach you, but maybe it's more like they're pushed to, maybe by you, etc. But the thing is, you're one of the mob, and they're trying to appease the mob. So whether they come to you and say, please do this thing for us, don't light my house on fire, just go to the next one. Or whether you're saying, look, we're going to light your house on fire instead of the next one, unless, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing. So Telegraph goes on to say, those with lived experience... Oh, this is, no, them quoting those people, okay? Those with lived experience can provide valuable input when it comes to reviewing language to help ensure that the stories can continue to be enjoyed by all children. Diversity. So on occasions, we work with publishers on classic texts, unquote. Yeah, you work on them. Classic texts. You hear iconoclasts. Some teachers are... This is the Telegraph now. Some teachers argue it's the children's tastes that are changing. Scott Evans has been a primary school teacher for 8 years and works on at a school in South Wales near Cardiff, where Dahl grew up. He runs a website, The Reader Teacher, and has worked as a sensitivity reader. Quote, I understand the arguments some may say about censorship and diminishing the author's voice, unquote, he says. Quote, however, after recently rereading some children's books by Dahl, some language stood out as offensive, while other terms have become outdated over time. Here, sensitivity readers can make suggested adaptations to make them more accessible to children. Quote, when you ask children and adults why they are drawn to Dahl's books, it's often the sense of rebellion within them that they mention, unquote, he adds. Quote, while maintaining this spirit in... So he knows, and he's going to destroy it anyway. That's probably why he's doing this. Quote, while maintaining this spirit in children's books is essential, and suppressing it entirely is not the answer either. It's about making sure that the characters and content are mischievous but not malicious in their nature, unquote. Quote, some of the descriptions are a bit problematic with some of the characters, unquote, she acknowledges. Nevertheless, quote, people have said that about characters in the Harry Potter novels, unquote. And there is a way of contextualizing Dahl's work. Quote, the process of editing often focused on individual words or particular expressions, as Dahl kept faith with some of the interwar slang of his childhood, and aspects of his vocabulary up to his death continued to recall the enthusiasms of English prep schoolboys. This was both natural to him and deliberate, and he resisted interference. Quote, his relationships with editors included marked fractiousness on Dahl's part, unquote, he adds. Quote, overruling proposed word changes made by the American editor of The Witches, Stephen Roxburgh. Dahl wrote, quote, I don't approve of some of your Americanisms. This is Dahl saying, the original author saying this. I don't approve of some of your Americanisms. This is an English book with an English flavor, and so it should remain, unquote, unquote. Now, hey, as an American, yeah, I mean, look, don't Americanize your English stuff. Let it remain Anglo or whatever, you know? I don't want that to be Americanized or whatever. Keep your idioms and whatnot. As the artist intended, you know? Whatever the case may be. So, Telegraph, they're going to go on. Maybe I don't really have time to read all of that, but it's all there in my... Well, it's not all there in my article. I'm quoting some of the article, but it's quite a lot. Now, this is my own words. They give many examples of alterations, the alterations that were made in 2022. We'll look at a few. From his stories in general, references to mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, boys, girls, women, and men have been neutered. And that's across a lot of his books, if not all of them. Or at least all of them that Netflix or whatever own the rights to. Many, but not all, references to guns or even toy guns has been removed. You know, about the kid with the toy guns he loves so much. And you folks remember the movie. Terms like old, hag, geezer, thin, I meant to write, not thing, fat, fatty, flabby, double chin, ugly, midget, dwarf, slave, prisoner, pimply, maniac, mad, nut, nutty, crazy, screwy, bat, dotty, wacky, sane, idiots, frumptuous freaks have been removed multiple times, so I'll save you each individual time. And queer has been changed to strange, no doubt because the term queer later became a pejorative for homosexual, even though they, reclaimed it to some extent. It is now no longer a bad word because they reclaimed it, but of course, queer means strange, and I love the quaintness of language. Even terms may be different now, but we all know what it is. I hope we all know the context of using queer. It originally means strange, and then it became a pejorative for homosexual. It was a way of saying they were different. All right? Ah, my goodness. Also, references to people's height, sex, weight, sanity, skin color, and so on have been replaced or removed from his books. From Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, quote, it's not ladylike, quote, unquote, has been altered to, quote, it's undignified, unquote. Orders have been replaced with instructions. Many other terms and passages removed and replaced in that book. References to people wearing animal skins has been removed from that book, as well as along with many other terms and entire passages. James and the Giant Peach, I noticed, white skin, pink skin, going pale, blushing, removed. Many references there too. Also, policeman has been changed to police. Fireman has been changed to firefighters, and so on. In Matilda, mentions of Rudyard Kipling, I'm sorry I already mentioned that, has been removed. Other changes about skin and tones of their skin and stuff like that. In the Twits, many alterations include the biological essentialist and binary phrase, ladies and gentlemen, being changed to the more inclusive term, folks. And the word weird being removed from weird African language. Frumpet has been changed to frump. And perhaps Brits could explain what either of these two mean, because I'm a Yank and I don't know. But apparently one is good and one's not. One's politically correct and one is not. From his story, The Witches, quote, you can't go around pulling the hair of every lady you meet, even if she is wearing gloves, just you try and see what happens, unquote, has been changed to, quote, besides, there are plenty of other reasons why women might wear wigs, and there certainly is nothing wrong with that, unquote. That's like a lecture. It's like somebody's being lectured to with the change, the editorial change there. My goodness. Okay. Bald-headed was removed, as were I was crazy, strong men, he needs to go on a diet, and there was something indecent about a bald woman. I do not wish to speak badly about women. Most women are lovely. Rather pretty young lady. And he needs to go on a diet, and many other phrases in The Witches. In the book BFG, among many other changes, references to the characters being brown, black, reddish brown, and so on are removed or replaced. Eskimo, and I guess that's a British spelling, has been changed to Intuit. I meant Inuit, sorry. Because that's now the politically correct term for an Eskimo, is Inuit. It's, I think, more correct. I don't know. Like, factually correct. In Isio Trot, if I'm saying that correctly, attractive middle-aged lady is now a kind middle-aged lady. So I guess it's like marginalizing to ugly people to say that some people are attractive, because that implies that others aren't. In Fantastic Mr. Fox, hopping around like a dervish has been altered to hopping around like a frog, because you see a dervish is a reference to a particular a
whirling dervish.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the name. It's the mystical branch of Islam, and the name escapes me right at the moment, but
the world for enlightenment.
Yeah. But, you know, apparently that's, I guess, racist or culturally insensitive or whatever, but... Woo-woo.
Well, everything's culturally insensitive. That's what makes it funny. Or interesting. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's half of comedy. What's wrong with you?
Now, I included in the written version some tweets that give you a side-by-side with some red underlined there to really illustrate. But I think we have gone on long enough about this. But if you're really interested enough to read all these, you can go and read those, folks. Vampire Lestat. I didn't have time before going live here to get into that. But that's, of course, another example. If you know the original book, folks, Louis, I believe, is French?
Yes.
Yeah, French aristocracy, I'm pretty sure, right?
Lestat in his own right. Well, no, that's different vampire.
Well, whatever. The main vampire characters in that story are European white dudes, and they do end up in New Orleans, right? But they're not. Their blood is not from that area, so they're not going to be Creole or
nope.
anything, you know. So that's another example. But I didn't have time to go into that. But you can also, along these lines of Stalinization or memory holing, you can see, I have links here too, How Photos Became a Weapon in Stalin's Great Purge by History.com. That's the History Channel people. From 2018, update in 2020. How Stalin's propaganda machine erased people from photographs, 1922 to 1953, by rare historical photos. They don't give a date, but they do say it was updated in 2021. Also in the My Culture War Encyclopedia, when I eventually get around to putting these all here, you can click on these and see my section on book burning, cancel culture, financial unpersoning, which I think I have there. I don't know why I didn't link to. Gatekeeping, Orwell, which I think I have. Orwellianism, and vaporize, which is basically, to unperson someone or in a memory hole something. But I think in 1984, vaporize is always applied to people. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So I will explore some more of this at a later date. And please, folks, when I'm forgetting about things that have been memory hold, I'm not very pop culture-y myself, so I don't know a lot of these. Comment, give me examples, and you can even comment on the written version of this or on this video, whatever the case may be, and I'll try to add that to the Culture Encyclopedia to this as well. So thank you very much, folks. Make sure you click on the links and go to the bottom, almost the bottom here. Make sure you subscribe. Please share, social media, whatnot. Thanks, everyone. Laughter my shield, knowledge my steed, wit I might wield, but question my reed. Liberty my right, truth my sword, love my life, honor my reward. Thank you very much.